So I've already done an entire video on ranged killers in Dead by Daylight. Unfortunately, that video is kind of outdated because very shortly after that video got released, BHVR ended up reworking Trickster. Now, I haven't played Trickster much since his rework. I remember playing him on the PTB and thinking he wasn't stupid powerful. A lot of people were saying he was A tier. And in my recent killer tier list, I ended up putting him in the high B tier. But in reality, you know, most of that video is still relevant. Ranged characters in Dead by Daylight in general are, in my opinion, some of the most powerful characters in the game, if only for the fact that they can cover distance very quickly with a myriad of tools. You have Artis, who can is basically a cross-map huntress. She could just, Artis is just, unless there's a map with like elevation, Artis is very, very strong at cross-map pressure. You have Huntress, who recently got buffs and she didn't need them, by the way. I'm still baffled that BHVR decided to buff Huntress in the Chapter 31 patch, because it's just like, why? Why did we buff Huntress? I don't know why we buffed Huntress. Why did we buff Huntress? Huntress didn't need the buffs, but Huntress recently got buffs, which makes her incredibly strong. I've actually have played against Huntress a lot since those buffs, and holy crap, is she so much harder to deal with now. But then you have the Trickster Giga buffs and how they affected him, where you know, they basically were like, we know Trickster's a range killer, but we're gonna buff his speed for no reason, and then we're gonna make main event stupid easy to get, and then we're just gonna give him all these tools. And for the most part, ranged killers are in pretty good spots. As I'm recording this might be fixed by the time you see this video, but as I'm recording this, there is some bugs with the plague that make her very difficult to utilize, but or not difficult, but clunky to utilize. And so for the most part, every ranged killer in the game has gotten a lot of love, except for the Deathslinger. So Slinger in general is a character that I find to be fairly weak. Slinger's biggest weakness is unfortunately the same weakness that a lot of M1 killers have, and that's pallets. Because Slinger can spear you, he's got a very, very good chase potential. But spearing you on the other side of a pallet does nothing for him if you're already injured. And that's the biggest problem. When Slinger tries to spear you, if you are already injured, his spear isn't going to do anything unless he can get in range to hit you. So doing things like shooting through small cracks and shooting over pallets and all this other stuff is cool and all, but it doesn't really matter if you're already injured, because all he's going to end up doing is re-deep wounding you, assuming you don't currently have deep wounds on you. And so it makes it very difficult for Slinger to get a lot of pressure going the same way that other ranged killers are able to get a lot of pressure. With Slinger, one of his biggest issues is that he just can't keep up like the rest of them can, and that comes from the fact that he cannot deal health states from a range. That's the big thing here. Even though Slinger is in the same category as ranged killers, Slinger can't deal damage from range. He has to M1 you in order to down you. He can injure you without M1ing you if he forces the chain break, but after that, he can't actually down you without getting you to him. And so things like obstacles that block and break the chain faster, pallets, and other things like that are very, very bad for him. Which is why I'm wondering why someone like Huntress got buffed before Slinger. There's a lot of clunkiness to the character that I don't particularly enjoy, like the fact that he doesn't have a quick scope. And, you know, I guess I understand why that is, but the way they implement the quick scope is part of why he feels clunky. So get this. In my opinion, the way you get rid of quick scoping is to make it to where there is a buffer between right clicking and left clicking. But instead what they did, and this is according to the wiki, there is actually a buffer between left clicking and firing the spear. So the reason you can't quickscope isn't because when you right click, the left click turns off for 0.5 seconds. It's when you left click, there is a 0.5 second delay in between left clicking and actually shooting the gun, which feels really, really bad. Another problem with Slinger is that for some reason, even though he is a 110 killer, he also has a 32 meter terror radius. So it's very easy for the survivors to be like, oh my God, there's Slinger, and fucking start running and finding cover and things like that. Oh, but you could point your gun and shoot them. Yes, but if they're aware of your presence early enough, it's very easy for survivors to avoid you. And unless you're a flick slinger, which is not a common thing for people to be because it takes a lot of practice, you can sometimes find yourself in very unfavorable situations. Because essentially what you have to do is think of Slinger like an M1 killer that can draw the survivors to him. So he suffers from a lot of problems that M1 killers suffer from. What I think Slinger needs is to have his terror radius reduced to 24 meters. If you're going to keep him at 110, reduce his terror radius to 24 meters. That way you can actually do things like stealth Slinger builds. One problem I forgot to mention, because this isn't a breakdown analysis, that's going to come much, much later. I'm almost finished with the Billy script when I'm recording this. But one of the big problems with Slinger is that whenever he's aiming at a survivor, they get an auditory noise, so they know to dodge. And even if you're undetectable, they hear it and they're like, oh, I'm being aimed at by Deathslinger, and they just get off the fucking gen, or they get out of the way, or whatever the case may be. So he needs less predictability so that he's not as easy to get away from. Now, the question is that would this be healthy, or would it be better to just revert Trickster and Huntress buffs? And the answer is I don't know. I don't actually know, because while I want Slinger to be powerful because he is one of my favorite killers in the game to play, I also don't know if it would be healthy to buff him to the same rate that Trickster and Huntress got buffed, because now they're both incredibly powerful killers, and for a lot of people, they're incredibly unfun to go against. So I guess I'll end up leaving that question to you guys. Do you think that Slinger needs to be buffed so that he's more in line with Trickster and Huntress? Or do you think that Trickster and Huntress need to have their buffs reverted so that we can all go back to the old status quo? Let me know down in the comments down below. And as always, a great big special thank you to my channel members listed on screen now. If you want to find out how to become a channel member today and get awesome perks like seeing videos early, merch discount codes, and more, then please click that join button down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.